Good morning. The proposal of the Amazonia plus 21 is to find mechanisms to overcome the hardships and propose new sustainable business models for the social economical development of the Amazon region, generating income and jobs for the Amazonian people with the full protection to the biome to transform a diverse environment such as the Amazon that encompasses 9 countries, 9 states in Brazil is a huge task at hand. The need for infrastructure, mobility, connectivity, access to health and education have direct impact in the income and the quality of life for over 24 million Brazilian people that live in the Amazon. The pressures over the Amazon are countless in different spheres, by different reasons, by different interests: preservation, sustainability, sovereignty, geopolitics, ideology, geoeconomy. Both Brazil and the external world have several concerns regarding the future of the region. To widen the dialogue and converge the interests, plans and government projects, academia, productive sector, funding institutions, and the organized civil society, those are guidelines of this forum that shows the path to go forward with the consolidations of new activities towards the local development from the Amazon to the world. To increase the economic matrix and harmonize generation of income with the conservancy of the forest, the social welfare, and the guarantee of rights and valuing to cultural diversity, languages, anthropology, form the way of living, and to fight illegal activities and generate productivity to all without leaving anyone behind. This is the full matrix of solutions to be pursued by the World Forum Amazon plus 21. Those are important axles for us. Well, innovative models, uh, technology and innovation as premises for the economic activities of the biome: culture, history, diversity, values, customs, choices of life, and funding, financial resources for high impact businesses and projects. The World Amazon Forum, or the World Forum Amazon Plus 21 initiative of the municipal government of Porto Velho, the fostering agency of Porto Velho, and the Amazon Fund, with the support of CNI and IEL. And we'd like to thank the government of the state of Rondônia, SEBRAE, ABDI, Energia Sustentável do Brasil, Geral Plant, among others, as our sponsors. The event is being broadcasted through the website Amazonia21.org and in all channels of CNI with translation into English and Spanish. Amazon Plus 21 is born from the restlessness and the need of building a sustainable model for the region that dialogue with the Amazon model. So far, what we have seen are initiatives that are dispersed, unconnected, in a contradictory agenda, let's say, between development and conservancy. Our proposal is to identify this pathway forward in the harmonization between the economic development, sustainability, with the full conservancy of the Amazon as consequence. This event was going to happen in person in May, and we had to suspend it. For that reason, we transformed this event and this journey into a fully virtual environment in order for all to be able to participate and for us to advance in this dialogue to try and find the best way forward. And for today, as main topic of this first panel, we'll talk about funding alternatives for businesses and high impact projects in the Amazon. The experiences of local institutions that have made the difference in the lives of people, in the life in Amazon, in local context, and new opportunities as well towards the development of the region. For that, we count on the presence of Alexis Bastos, coordinator of Rio Terra in the Rio Terra Study Center, Eugênio Pantoja, director of Public Projects, e Pan Victor Salviati, Superintendent of Innovation of the Amazon Foundation, FAS, Julia Ambrosano, Manager of the Institutional Relations of Climate Bonds, and Gabriel Azevedo, Head of Divisions of Environmental Subjects of the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB. In order for us to start, I'll pass the floor to Alexis Bastos, please. You have the floor. Hello, good morning. It is a pleasure to be here with you and to be able to share a bit of the Bioterra history and to be able to share with such a diverse group topics related to regional development in the Amazon. I believe this panel is quite interesting because it brings in itself a point that is quite related to the Amazon, which is diversity. So we have a panel of people that work in different scales. Therefore, we have institutions, or have foster institutions. We have project implementation agencies, as well as other segments. And also, due to that, it has different views with regards to the development in the Amazon. And this certainly makes the debate even more well-reacher and bring different looks or different aims in different scales. And what we're going to talk today is a bit from what we are. We are, as I've mentioned, we're institution or base institution. Work together with people directly, and from that position, we're going to contextualize and speak on funding with you. That's what I wanted to initially bring. Thank you, Marcelo, for the invitation to be here. Thank you very much, Alexis. Now I pass the floor to Mr. Pantoja for his initial considerations. Eugenio, please open your mic. Okay, here you go. Well, good morning to all of you. It is a great pleasure to be here contributing with this very important debate for the development of the Amazon region. I'd like to congratulate the initiative of the Federation of Industries of the state of Rondônia in behalf of President Tomé and the National Confederation of Industries as well, and all that organized this event. I'd like to greet everybody on the floor in behalf of Julia and our colleagues also. And by greeting Julia, I'd like to greet everybody. Well, in events as such, it is quite timely to discuss the extreme relevance regarding the Amazon, regarding development, and to bring this integrated view, as well as strategic view to the region, into this process of development that we are aiming for a while. I mean, there are experiences of long time, experiences that did not work, and some of them that did. So we have today the maturity that is necessary in order to identify what are the biggest challenges for the Amazon region. And from that identification, to take positions regarding public initiatives from the private society, the academia, the civil society, as it has been mentioned. Science is so important in this process of development of strategies and guidelines and actions, or structuring actions for the region, in order for us to be able to find a convergency point to develop and bring what is the most important thing, which is the well-being of the traditional institutions and indigenous people out of the 25 million people that we have in the region. This is a challenge for all of us. We live in a moment of uncertainties, and this certainly brings even bigger challenges, and in spaces as such as this one that we are in, this proposal of bringing people together with different views from different institutions, different strategies. for this development project is of indeed importance in order to find this pathway towards the regional development. So to bring from the IDB as well as initiatives of new funding strategies, and as well as organizations that work in the science and in base, is quite important to build this process. IPAM has worked a lot. IPAM has worked a lot into building the tropical development into the Amazon region, considering its environmental characteristics as well as the social ones and economic ones, as if I may, in all the territories, because we know it's 9 different states within the legal Amazon in Brazil, 9 states with different characteristics, with different views of development, but some elements are converging and they need to be looked at in an integrated fashion. So once again, I'd like to congratulate this initiative, and we'll bring some experiences on this view that we defend that integrated actions towards the Amazon are essential for this development process. And I'd like to make use of this moment just to acknowledge our colleague Azevedo, that André Guimarães, send him his best. We've worked together for a while. Once again, I'd like to thank the opportunity, and we are here to discuss all that. Thank you, Marcelo, and congratulations to everybody. Well, thank you, Eugenio. Now I pass the floor directly to Vitor Salviati from the Sustainable Amazon Foundation for his initial considerations. You have the floor. Thank you, Marcelo. Good morning to all of you. I kindly request the presentation to be put up, and I'll make use of some pictures first to be inspired in this discussion that you have mentioned so well. While the presentation is being put up, I'd like to thank not only the Confederation of Industries, the government of Rondônia, and I'd like to congratulate how sensitive this event is. Because when we talk about Amazon, we need to talk not only in Portuguese, but in Spanish and in English as well. Those are the languages, let's say the official languages of the territory. Next slide, please. The National Sustainable Foundations, which is one of the largest foundations in the Amazon, and I'm speaking from Manaus, we have an active council, and we work with the riparian communities and indigenous communities. This amazing picture, just for you to understand, this is the territorial work. It's indigenous nation, indigenous ground, and this is a picture of the Amazon. If you don't know it, basically, riparian communities that depend on the forest and the waterways for the transportation and communications with other territories. Next one, please. This is the map of the Amazonas. We work in 581 communities, 9,400 families, and 11 million hectares. So quite significant territory, and our strategy is always to work with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. We have 2 important results in the past 12 years. Through the bioeconomy, investment, empowerment, and social protection of these populations, we were able to increase the income in the territories that we work in 202%, overcoming the line established by the World Bank of extreme poverty. It is a victory, of course. Nevertheless, we still haven't reached the threshold of overcoming poverty. I mean, we are above extreme poverty, but we're still under the poverty line. So you don't have as dignifying as a living as we wish for these communities. We also had in the same territory the decrease in deforestation of 76%. So it is quite interesting to show the circumstance showing that the investment in bioeconomy and training of people, social protection, we were able to contribute for the increase in income and decrease deforestation. With the paradigm that breaking the paradigm that I went to the forest to develop. And this is data of 2019-2020 that we weren't able to put in the past graph. So you see a decrease in 37% deforestation in the territory that we work, while in the Amazon it increased 28%. Here are our partners, some of our partners. We work with 261 partnerships. The public productive sector, the private productive sectors, and communities, multilateral agencies. And it's important to have this diversity of players because we can't do anything alone in such a large territory. Next one, please. And here, just a pinch towards the debate that we're going to have further on, because we understand that the biggest challenge of developing wealth and prosperity in the territory is to work with favorable business environments. We have challenges such as logistics, training of people, financing or funding, which is this panel that we are in, but the business environment, and Gabriel will speak of that, and Julia as well, the business environment is something that needs to be made suitable to the anthropological dynamics and of this territory. Next one. In those next slides, I will just mention a couple of things and some results that we've had. This is pirarucu, the largest fish in Amazon. It's delicious. We work a lot with the sustainable management in cooperatives of fisheries, and we were able to get this with the support of BNDES Bank to increase the price of this pirarucu from 350 reais to 980, bringing more wealth, and bringing more productivity, and improving quality of life for these families. We have Guaraná, also an important work with Coca-Cola company. Tourism, which is an activity that was tackled by the pandemic, and we're talking to the local government and the federal agencies to be able to see how we can resume tourism, which is quite important for the Amazon, because this brings very low degradation upon the good management of that. We'll have the manioc flour, something. You can see that I'm not from the Amazon, I'm from São Paulo, but I chose Manaus and the Amazon to live in. This flour is delicious, and with the support of Seno regions, that when we acquire this flour, you can hear the history behind it, which is very important. Each of these products has history behind it. And I conclude by inviting all of you to be part of the Amazon Day on September 23rd, an online event as this one that we are in. And as the Amazon+21 forum, we'll be able to debate and build alliances and overcome challenges. This will happen within the General Assembly of the United Nations, and there is more information in the websites on screen. Thank you. And our motto is always making the forest worth more standing than on the floor, considering the diversity of the people of the forest. Thank you very much. Thank you, Victor. And I pass the floor to Julia Ambrosano from Climate Bonds. Julia.
Olá, bom dia. Obrigada pelo convite. É um prazer estar aqui hoje, falando em nome da Climate Bonds Initiative. A Climate Bonds Initiative é uma organização com foco no investidor, uma organização internacional com foco no investidor, cujo objetivo é o fomento e desenvolvimento de mercados de capitais de longo prazo, através de instrumentos verdes, para acelerar a transição de economia global de baixo carbono. Então, de uma economia carbono intensiva para uma economia de baixo carbono, que seria através de instrumentos financeiros verdes. As nossas três principais frentes a atuação no fomento de mercados de títulos verdes internacionais, e esse é o nosso principal foco aqui no Brasil e na América Latina. Coordenar também a definição dos critérios de elegibilidade que seria o verde, né? E também produzir análises de inteligência de mercado. Objetivos verdes O primeiro título verde surgiu ali em 2009, e ele foi muito impulsionado através dos princípios, né, de títulos verdes lançados por INCMA. Então, a partir disso, a CBI identificou um gap, né? O que seria esse verde, né? Como definir o verde, e aí foi a partir daí que a organização começou a trabalhar na definição desses critérios, que tem uma alta base científica, né? Então, são grupos de trabalho que a CBI coordena da indústria e também o grupo acadêmico-científico, onde a gente vai olhar para 2050, né, e o que a gente precisa ter hoje para atingir o que foi acordado na Acordo de Paris, um aquecimento máximo de 1,5 grau agora, né, da temperatura terrestre. E a partir disso a gente tem a nossa taxonomia e a definição de critérios, né? O que a gente vem desenvolvendo no Brasil, e a gente tem times ao redor do mundo também desenvolvendo mercados. Nosso time aqui no Brasil, ele tem trabalhado muito próximo com o governo, né? Então a gente assinou ali o memorando de entendimento com o Ministério de Infraestrutura, a gente também tem com o MAPA, né, o Ministério de Agricultura, e também a gente firmou, ainda nós estamos em momentos preliminares ainda, mas a gente firmou um memorando de entendimento também com os estados amazônicos, né, ali com o objetivo também de identificar as oportunidades e também destravar projetos verdes, não sustentáveis ali na região. Fico aberta também a falar um pouquinho mais para frente, aliás, sobre as oportunidades que a gente identifica. Eu trabalho muito com a carteira de infraestrutura, mas espero representar bem ali também um pouco das oportunidades que tem também em outras áreas para a região. Então, a gente enxerga os títulos verdes como uma oportunidade, né, para o país, né, não só atingir os objetivos ali determinados pela sua NDC, né, que está abaixo do Acordo de Paris, mas também é uma oportunidade para estabelecer um caminho de crescimento sustentável, em acordo também com os ODSs ali estabelecidos pela ONU. A incorporação dos riscos da mudança climática no planejamento, né, de projetos de infraestrutura, projetos do governo, a não incorporação ela apresenta riscos, né, econômicos e a nível nacional, né? Então, a integração dos critérios de mitigação, resiliência, adaptação e compensação desenvolvidos pela CBI, ela não só é uma oportunidade para você diminuir o risco, né, da infraestrutura, mas também para atingir novos fluxos de capitais, né? A gente nunca teve tanto capital verde hoje disponível como a gente tem hoje no mundo, onde você tem fundos com mandatos específicos para investir em ativos verdes, em ativos ASG, né, em fatores ASG. Então, o título verde também é uma oportunidade de acessar essas noções de capital que estão procurando por esse tipo de fator, né, nos seus investimentos. Vou encerrar minha fala inicial por aqui. Obrigada mais uma vez, é um prazer estar aqui nessa manhã. E vamos seguir ali com as discussões.
Let's continue with the discussions. Thank you, Julia. I'm going to pass the floor to Gabriel Azevedo from Inter-American.
Bom dia, Marcelo. Bom dia a todos.
Thank you, Marcelo.
Bom dia a todos que nos assistem, muito obrigado. Eu acho que um evento com essa magnitude e a participação de tanta gente, não só na região Amazônia, mas no espaço da Amazônia, mas no espaço muito mais amplo, de sua importância. Marcelo, eu queria não só agradecer, mas parabenizá-lo. Eu acho que a sua iniciativa de forma digital tem vários subprodutos, e um deles, eu acho que é um dos aprendizados que vamos tirar desse período tão único na história mundial da pandemia, que é vamos dizer assim, um empoderamento digital de instituições de pessoas. Eu acho que a pandemia nos levou a buscar, a termos que alcançar uma proficiência digital, e eu acho que isso será um benefício futuro para todos nós, e quem sabe uma ferramenta ainda mais importante para o trabalho que nós queremos fazer na região amazônica. Eu acho que apontou aí a questão do espaço, e eu acho que a inserção digital é uma das ferramentas que temos à nossa disposição para encurtar essa distância. Queria também agradecer, Marcelo, e aos organizadores por uma coisa muito pessoal. A minha carreira há mais de 30 anos me levou a Rondônia, em várias roupagens, de várias formas, né, no Banco Mundial, no setor privado, às vezes, e ver começar o dia aqui em Washington, com as fotos dos executórios, com as fotos de madeira, da usina, realmente é uma coisa que me enche de energia e prazer, e me traz, assim, uma questão muito pessoal. Quero fazer uma saudação especial também aos colegas da mesa, e aí, obviamente, temos que saudar a Júlia como a representante da diversidade de gênero, mas eu quero saudar o Eugênio e o Ivan, porque eu acho que, assim como o Terra, eles trazem uma outra coisa muito importante, que é o conteúdo técnico, a substância técnica, e o Ivan foi uma referência. Eu tive a felicidade na minha carreira, nos últimos 30 anos, de trabalhar diretamente com três das instituições aqui representadas, o CBI, o BID, onde eu trabalho, vou falar um pouco em parceria com o CBI, somos o maior emissor de blogs temáticos, não só verde na região da América Latina, para o setor privado, trabalhamos com eles, o IPAN em várias roupagens, no Banco Mundial, no BID, no setor privado, e a Fundação Amazônia Sustentável, onde eu tive o prazer de trabalhar no início da sua criação. Eu acho, Marcelo, que tudo que os colegas colocaram no precedente, eu queria fazer apenas duas considerações. A primeira é apresentar um pouco o BID Invest, porque obviamente o BID é a instituição multilateral mais importante, maior na América Latina como um todo, mas eu trabalho no BID Invest. O grupo BID, em 2015, deve consolidar todo o seu apoio ao setor privado em uma instituição específica, desenhada com as características, com a roupagem, com a linguagem, os recursos humanos e financeiros necessários para atender o setor privado, que se chama BID Invest. Somos parte do grupo BID, trabalhamos em sinergia, somos a única multilateral que é controlada pelos países regionais, ou seja, o controle acionário do grupo BID dos países da região, que tem 51% das suas ações votantes. Isso é completamente diferente de todos os outros bancos multilaterais, do Banco Mundial e dos outros bancos regionais, que são controlados pelos países doadores. Isso nos faz com que tenhamos uma inserção muito forte na nossa região. E, como em relação ao setor privado, nós criamos o BID Invest em 2016. Hoje já temos uma carteira ativa de 14 bilhões de dólares e estamos fazendo, nesse ano, 2020, cerca de 7 bilhões de dólares de novas operações, apenas para dar a vocês uma ideia da nossa dimensão. Isso apenas no setor privado, apoio ao setor privado. O Brasil é o nosso maior cliente do BID Invest, e do BID também, da parte pública, mas do BID Invest, setor privado. No setor privado, o Brasil detém entre 18% e 20% de toda a nossa carteira. Nós atuamos nos 26 países da região, estamos presentes fisicamente nos 26 países. E atuamos em 4 setores principais. Talvez um dos mais importantes é o setor de infraestrutura, onde atuamos em energia, transporte, infraestrutura social e água e saneamento, através do setor privado. O setor que nós chamamos de corporativos de manufatura em geral, turismo, ações digitais e telecom. e agronegócios. E aí o setor financeiro, onde temos duas áreas, uma área que trabalha diretamente com bancos, para repasses a pequenas e médias empresas, e uma área que trabalha com fundos, emissões de títulos, como falou a Júlia, e outros produtos financeiros. Buscamos um alinhamento muito forte entre as nossas atividades de impacto e fico muito feliz em ver a ênfase que todos os que me antecederam deram nos aspectos de investimento com impacto. E já antecipando o que pode ser um pouco da nossa discussão, eu vejo que um dos desafios que temos para alcançar a visão que o Marcelo colocou na sua abertura de um processo de desenvolvimento inclusivo, diferente, né, responsável, é mudar o chip. Nós temos que mudar a discussão quando trabalhamos na região amazônica de uma discussão de equações de mínimos e colocá-las numa equação de máximo. Sair da retórica do mínimo ou simplesmente da compliance, da conformidade, ou seja, atender uma licença e buscar uma equação de máximo, competitividade, impacto, quais são nossas vantagens.
And this is a first change. We're talking about the knowledge economy. This is not missing. We have Amazon and so many other institutions based on the Amazon, not only on the Brazilian Amazon, but as other countries that detain knowledge. And if you're able to work out governance of all institutions, or public and private institutions for that matter, and the governments of all interinstitutional ones, the third sector government and private sector, and if we're able to aim at those and leaving the local proposal, which we call the minimum equation, because the discussion in other countries that we're doing the Brazil, well, let's say, oh, we were able to do that, or we have the support, but to try and find rhetoric that says that we're going to reach and we're going to become more and more competitive. For instance, I believe Vitor has shown some projects in value chain that are quite important, and I had the joy of leading the World Bank project, the pilot program for PPG 7 for development of tropical forest. And as far as we had different initiatives that at the moment we called boutique projects. And why so? Well, there was this huge challenge in correlate these local initiatives with part of a value chain that is wider, national and global ones. We evolved, but there's still a lot of work to be done in this process of connecting local chains with the national chains and global ones. And the private sector may have a fundamental role in this process. If the private sector tries to invest in the Amazon, and if it has capacity, as I've mentioned, to focus in a result equation and high impact and competitiveness, and not in an equation of simply being able to implement a project. I said that my professional life has surpassed Rondônia in many phases. I work intensively in the timber plants, and I saw the picture of the Geral plant in writing of that, with the energy vocation and how to use different energy matrices, digital insertion, and those are important ones. We do not want to leave aside any Amazon sector if it's done with responsibility. So when we work in the private funding, regardless of what it is, I always tell my team, well, the first thing that you need to understand is the intention of your client. If they want to do things, the right things, if they want to have a positive impact, but the technology is missing the governance and capital, well, it's easy. There are other institutions that we can bring to help. What is fundamental is the macro objective is governance, is determination. From above or below to do the right thing. Once again, I'd like to thank you. It's a pleasure to work with all of you in this debate. Thank you. Thank you, Gabriel. It's great to hear your views and experiences and live. We are here represented Rondônia. We have Pará, Amazonas. Gabriel speaking from Washington, D.C. Well, it's great to promote this dialogue, hearing everybody. Perhaps this is the main legacy, the biggest legacy, and one of the main objectives that I have regarding Amazon+21, and to establish a permanent forum for everybody to be heard and to be able to contribute, and at the end, to have the best path forward for a region. Julia, you talked about the opportunities in the financial volume that is made available in the planet towards green bonds. Well, considering green bonds are in high demand in the world, please explain the role of this title. What are the opportunities and challenges for us in Brazil, and more specifically in the Amazon, to the use of these titles, fostering a high carbon economy, or a low carbon economy for that matter? Well, green bonds is a conventional bond for the capital market. So before it's green, it is an operation. It is a bond. The green label is what signals to the investor some compliances with climatic accreditation, let's say. So the challenges for the application, let's say, or for green bonds in the capital market in the region and in Brazil, they are the conventional challenges that we have in all types of bonds, or in the funding of our infrastructure. So normal challenges, once again, nothing different from that. The green bond, well, it signals to the investor this transparency, these accreditations, if I made this risk mitigation. So when I talk about considering climate risks, the resilience, the training, well, and all that, we're talking about considering how we are taking this project forward. So even an operator, and even, this market, if I may, this climate bond market, green bonds, well, it was brought up from the investment in traditional assets, in types of traditional investments. But if I'm an operator of a project and I know I'm building an infrastructure at a place that I know there will be, a climate change impact or higher rainfall rates throughout the years, and I'm not taking into consideration the changes that are taking place, well, the risk of depreciation of that asset is not taken into consideration. So I'm bringing more risk to the investor. The investors are becoming more attentive to that and are willing to mitigate the risk of their portfolio. And when I say that, well, that's when you have more opportunities from green bonds and climate bonds into accessing those new capital flows, a investor portfolio that is not going to look at an asset or investment type if it was not under this, green label, if I may. And from that on, and if we can attract new capital flows, we can also take the opportunity to, let's say, mature this market. So we have a capital market that is quite incipient and has grown a lot in the past years. And to attract this, by attracting these new flows, it's a new opportunity to mature our local markets. Thank you, Julia. Along the same lines, Gabriel, considering a annual average of $500 billion for investment towards low carbon economy, what mechanisms, what conditions are necessary to make the Amazon effectively as a destination of a portion of these international investments? Thank you, Marcelo. Well, I believe this question is amazing because it shows the challenges and opportunities that we have forward. We talk about $500 billion capital flow. It should be around that or even more currently. Well, first thing we notice is in this investment where Brazil has a small portion or a small share, if you take into consideration the natural potential, the potential to influence the sustainability process, and the Amazon has a very small share of that. Ridiculously, if you consider its representativity of global assets. So where is this investment going? Just look at the flow map, or you go to Julia's website and you see the map that they have done quite well, or where the bonds have been issued, where you have mainly United States, Canada, and Europe. So, and China, in case of CBI, you have China as well. In the capital flow, general capital flow, China is not as strong. And why so? Because the market that has this investment, well, it needs predictability, and you're looking for the rules of the game to make sure that they are able to, well, give satisfaction to the investors, that, or to tell them that this capital for this investment is invested in assets and projects and initiatives that correspond to the expectations of this governance. And we were not able to inspire as country, as region in the market, this predictability and the degree of trust that is necessary in order to attract this capital flow. For me, it is an inverted equation to see the capital flow for sustainable development is concentrated in Europe, United States, and Canada. Well, how can we change that? We change that with governance. We change that with what you're trying to promote here, with a relationship between the public sector and the private sector, the third sector. You change that by creating a long-term strategic view. A strategic view of, well, state and not government view. You change that, establishing the rules of the game that are clear. And that doesn't mean, for instance, well, not dealing with projects, with controversial projects. Well, if we have the rules of the game well established, I believe that the Amazon vocation for energy can't be ignored. It is a natural one, and I see hydroelectric energy as an important renewable energy with the condition to have a higher growth of non-traditional ones, such as wind power and biomass, and solar one. The Amazon region has a natural vocation, natural calling for that, and why not use this? And how to use it is the more important thing. When we talk about logistics in the Amazon region, we debate a lot railways or roads, but we don't talk about the water logistics, which is the natural calling of the Amazon. And why are we creating so many seaports, water to land, and why are we not linking water to water? Just to give you a couple of examples. And even agribusiness. I believe agribusiness in the Amazon presents exceptional challenges. We need to do the math between the private benefit and the public benefit that come from this project, but you have to bear in mind the important representativity. Can we transform that and increase the productivity and efficiency? What the market wants is predictability, and not necessarily an easy project but a project with predictability, with good, well-designed rules of engagement. And if we can advance on that and present the world and investors, the Amazon as a region or as a nation that has a long-term view to this biome and the geographic space, and that this view aims at integrating the area, the local, national, and global, we can transform this capital flow and see the exponential growth in the capital flow towards the sustainable development of the Amazon. So we can conclude then, Gabriel, that business environment is a thing that is dear and necessary to be tackled rapidly, as well as the communication. And I say that because must get closer to get away from this image that in Amazon you can't generate sustainable businesses, while the main opportunity lie in the Amazon region at the end of the day. And in this mindset change, we can capture this investment opportunity, the foreign investment opportunities towards green bonds. Well, certainly, I believe the aspects that we have in the business environment, the communication and predictability are important. Julia has mentioned our capital market that is quite incipient in Brazil. That's true. It's quite incipient, but is by far the largest in all Latin America. So Brazil has the rules and the base for the development of capital markets. We are the largest in Latin America, but when compared to the rest of the countries, the 30 largest in the world, well, we are quite small. We need to shift that, and we need to favor the well-directed capital and the one towards participatory investment and sustainable one without using this jargon, but widely speaking, and certainly the bonds are some of the most important instruments for the capital market. And I just wanted to make an observation. I wouldn't focus only on green bonds. I believe green bonds are a natural vocation, they're important, but other thematic ones. In IDB Invest, we issued the first gender bond with the Vivenda Bank, and we're talking about blue bonds towards the sustainable development towards oceans and rivers. So the Amazon has all this potential. Amazon has this fabric, unique fabric, and why not focus on social bonds in Amazon? The green bonds are the natural ones. The blue ones may also be a calling. Those are only a few of the instruments that are having to increase in the capital flow to the region, and we must lay hand of them always. Thank you, Gabriel and Julia. And I was talking to a friend once, and he says we must monetize the Amazon asset. And I believe this is the basis for the different possibilities of the capital markets that the Amazon offers. And perhaps this initial effort of monetizing the Amazon would be the first step towards finding the best opportunities and transforming that into titles, into bonds that generate wealth for the Amazon region. If you allow me just 10 seconds, something that we need to be quite careful, and perhaps this would come up in the debate. I'll talk about substance. Well, as the largest issuer of bonds in the region, perhaps the largest one, we're talking about a risk that it calls bond washing. 10 years ago, we talked about greenwashing. What is that? Well, it's for you to mask a project as green, as sustainable. And now we are seeing in the growth of international bonds, the so-called bond washing, projects that offer bonds that are linked to climate or other objectives that have shown it themselves as, well, farce in substance. And as we're starting this process still, we must be quite careful with that. And I apologize, I just wanted to bring up this point to the debate. Great observation that you've made, because this is one of the values of Amazon+21, to basically ground all in trust. Otherwise, we won't reach our objective. I'd like to forward a question to all members of the institution, Alexis, Victor, and Eugenio. Rio Terra, as well as UPAM and FAS, those are institutions that are referenced to high-impact projects in generation of income in the Amazon. If you may, please comment on the project and challenges towards the development of the Amazon. Starting with you, Alexis, please. I believe the projects, we have several different challenges. And I'll use some of the points that have been brought by my colleagues here. And well, we are at a turning point. This turning point from a more talking about agriculture, and going to a more, from a high carbon to a low carbon economy. And this needs to be quite well worked out. So we live in this moment of questioning, and we see a series of points that are important to be positioned with regards to all of them, all the projects and all the challenges that as you've mentioned, well, have communication as one of the challenges. Some challenges that we have for the next years is to improve and talk about this turning point and having a look at it as a moment to the Amazon in itself, connected to the world. And I believe we have a challenge of communication because we need to have a clear, coherent language, and we need to have a way to show results, as Victor has mentioned. So we must show people clarity when we look at that, and concepts that are linked with climate change. I myself, I'm learning a lot from the issuing of bonds. So those are languages that must be, let's say, demystified and made clear. And when we talk about a certain topic, we must demystify what concepts are behind it for us to talk about the same thing. So it's important to bring this conceptual view, and communication, as you have just mentioned, this is it's in the very base, and also data. People want information, people look for transparency, and those are analysis, and we have a data volume that is huge right now, a Herculean work, and I'd like to congratulate IPAM in behalf of Virginia, as it is an institution that has important material and studies in the Amazon, and you work with a scenario of predictability in bringing arrangements that are important for the economies that are going around in the Amazon. That work with something that we always talk about, which is family agriculture, the implementation of forestry code, or the forest code, and we need for this communication to be well made. We need data well analyzed, and by the volume of data that we have today, this is not an easy task. We're carrying out this work, and we're working with the Crowther Lab from Switzerland. This is a study group that has launched a scientific article that based the decisions of the Davos, the 1 trillion trees, a campaign that is starting right now. But this is a mobilization that is huge of information and data that we must analyze and bring to people with regards to transparency and the mobilization towards the reasons why. I mean, we have different whys. Why are we talking to the people? Why are we conserving? And why are we working with a low carbon economy in the region? with a transparent and well-based economy. And another point is the cooperation factor. A long time ago, people would just gather the resources and execute something. Now, the main financiers in the world, they want the zoo agglutinated and cooperating mobilities, but it's important to have this cooperation. And I'm quite happy to be part of a forum that will have private initiative, third sector, academia, and everybody working together in the same dialogue, because without everybody sitting together to be able to dialogue, it would be quite hard for us to, well, as Gabriel Azevedo to say, it would be very hard to have a sustainable future if we do not have everybody sitting together and talking in order for us to find pathways for everybody to be able to develop their activities. I believe those are some of the challenges that we have at hand. That are in the very basis. And just to finish, well, here at the study center, we work a lot with the reduction of the social issues and conservation of biodiversity, especially focus in the social interoperability, because we believe this is the base of many points in climate change, but also the conservation of biodiversity. If we can't improve the income of the families, and if we can show pathways towards the different chains, not only bioeconomy that is linked to the indigenous populations, but the commodity chains as well, I believe it's going to be quite hard to, well, make the transition. What is the cost of this transition, and how can I bring more social and economic benefits, environmental one as well, from my decision making towards that. Thank you. Two important points that you bring, Alex, is the database, first and foremost. We talk about information, and sometimes they're conflicting information. And the biggest problem is the interpretation of data. The intelligence created from this type of data that many times takes up an ideological view when we must be restricted to science and scientific knowledge, and something that promotes the positive transformation of the territory. Another point that you bring is the wealth, the prosperity to reach the traditional populations and reach the basis of the pyramid. Otherwise, any strategy will be, well, innocuous, and we won't be successful in this process of sustainable development of the region. Yes, we have a lot of data, and for that region, data needs to be contextualized, because data without context may be used in a different way. And when you talk about this analysis, we need to have this information, bring this information to the public for this type of data to be well used as information. Well, in regards to the aspect of wealth, and we need to communicate well what is wealth, because wealth for one person needs to, well, for this center, we need to have, but it's important to have these values and the possibilities for transmission and the understanding of what is wealth for each type of person to be respected, and for us to work in the Amazon. And because besides the financial wealth, there is a wealth of culture, of languages, and knowledge that is important, that has this huge potential of attracting people and attracting looks at different purposes. And also there is well-being that perhaps would be a different point to be discussed. But yes, well, shows this transformation during this turning point of the world. I mean, people have asked themselves many different things regarding values regarding the pandemic. They're quite important. When I talk about value, I talk about the value of life and existence. But yes, Marcelo, those are a huge challenge, and we count on all of our partners together for us to take the step forward in the state of Rondônia. Victor, please, your considerations. Thank you, Marcelo. I believe we have three important premises. The first, well, why are we doing this? That's the first point Alex brought. It's not because we want prosperity alone or to generate wealth and diversity of market. No, it's because the Amazon is going towards is ending. Professor Lovejoy published an initiative that we are almost close to the point of no return. In 3 or 5 years, if we consider deforestation and the forest fires as they are, we're going to decrease the health of the forest and increase the solubility of the forest. And there will be a cycle, a destructive cycle of the forest. And this is terrible for the ones that live in the Amazon. It's worse for Brazil and the rest of the world. Climate, diversity, and many other points. The other aspect is that there is no one solution. Well, we have the bonds, the bonuses, family agriculture, and we have different activities taking place, and we shouldn't focus in a single one. Let's work with logistics. Everybody looks at logistics, and we're going to work with the research and development. We have conditions not only financial and human resources and institutional ones for each institution to tackle a challenge. Our focus on the business environment, as I mentioned, I believe, without just considering logistics and telecommunications, but I also know it's important. The business environment is something that we can have a very good cost benefit. An example that is away from my area, well, the biggest digital area of Samsung is in Manaus. And it's quite interesting to think that the apps, games, interactivity industries is here in Manaus, one of the largest in the world, because you have fiscal incentives at the economy area. And with a network of partners, you can train people to have investment, to have demand. And as it is a floating industry, what I produce here, I can send to Seoul, to Madagascar, Paris, and so on and so forth. So when we develop a good business environment, and it's not only being romantic, but it's not being philanthropic. Philanthropy is important, of course. Nevertheless, we must have financial market mechanisms for us to leverage that a bit. So our view is that philanthropy would enter through structuring environment, being water, transportation, and everything, and the market, the reimbursable market, the capital market, and all other financial mechanisms that are possible and available. They come to leverage businesses. And that entrepreneur that has a flow that is around 500,000 reais, well, they can have a loan from the Amazon Bank or other financial institutions that is helped by this philanthropy, because the structuring one will be given by philanthropy and the follow-up of institutions such as FAS, IPAM, Bioterra, and as other financial agents at the edge, such as the IDB. It is important for us to concatenate, to join together those possibilities and And the objective to do so is to protect the Amazon that is at close to the point of no return. And if you don't change the trajectory of territorial development and protection of the people in the Amazon, scientists says in 3 to 5 years, we will have irreversible problems. A review that you bring that I believe to be important, well, the problems are countless, and the solutions should be as such. And we can't treat one thing or the other. We need to advance in this agenda simultaneously in order for us to, break deforestation and illegal activities, to regulate land, and at the same time that I create funding mechanisms to leverage the different segments in the Amazon and other ones that we have as possibilities. And all of that should be done all at once. And I totally agree with this view that it is not one thing or the other, or not one thing after the other. It's everything at once in order for us to make things leave the paper and go to the ground. And even to stop being simplistic in those issues, we understand that first and foremost, there's a new economy or a new institutionality of economy in the past 5 to 7 years, that the forest has value. Açaí has its value. Copaíba, cupuaçu, cocoa has its value. And as you said before, it's not monetary only. It's cultural, anthropological, and ecological value. So we must bring that to the product. And that's why it is so important when we're going to acquire a product from the Amazon. And that's something that we work with the Amazon, with the Americanas store, with the online store. They have products such as reused wood or handcrafts. So we saw the history behind it. And this add values to the project. And you foster this history to go forward. And the consumer, the consumer must choose if they want to be part of a destructive chain or productive one. And it is very important. I close here by saying that, it is important to converge and to understand that what we don't agree, we leave to be thought about. We're in a polarized society, unfortunately, that if you're against me, you're my enemy. I mean, if you don't believe the same thing I do, you're my enemy, and we must open to debate, which is something that this forum has done. Bringing different views, trying to find convergencies for us to work together in this territory with the prosperity and sustainable development. Oh, perfect. This is our proposal to the dialogue and the dissonance to build the best place forward. Eugenio, please. Your considerations. Thank you, Marcelo. And just taking the hook of the science, perhaps the worst thing, worse than not using the data sources is to use wrongfully. So people who sit in Brasilia, in the capital, they think an idea that came out at breakfast would change the Amazon, but that's not the reality that we face. There are different needs of transformation. Victor and Alexis have mentioned that, the different challenges that we have in terms of civil society, high impact projects, and etc., as we've talked about. And when we talk about this assessment on how the civil society acts, and it's not so different, Julia, from the needs that we have of predictability, of risk, of analysis, or assessment, where to invest those resources to bring better impact and important experiences for it to be spread in the national scale. And under the scenario, we have always discussed how can we insert ourselves in the capital market discussion, bringing risk assessment to projects, and bringing this predictability of result, of impact, analysis of indicators, for us to have practical results and for it to be replicated in public policies as well as in the private initiative. We can't be, well, let's say, romantic as how we should align with the private initiative to find solutions for the Amazon. So that is, we don't have this need anymore. We're not talking about greenwashing or the other bond washing that Gabriel has brought. We're talking about effectively about bringing solution, being the capital market, and we consider a huge regional challenge, this territorial governance. This is very necessary for us to have this legal certainty, a territorial governance in frontier terms, in terms of legislation. The state efficiency is associated to that, but also the point regarding political stability. Who's going to invest in a land or in a productive chain if the political stability does not allow you to have this guarantee or low risks? Destroying the Amazon, bringing social conflict. How can an investor allocate resources or funds? We have discussed that in how to find alternative means in the private initiative to show that, well, there are challenges, they are important, they are structuring in the region, as it was well mentioned. When we talk about territorial planning, governance, this political stability is indeed very important. And so we have this whole group of this whole set of elements for us to discuss and find solutions. And spaces as this that we are is very important. IPAN concluded a project at Transamazônica. Well, we use a whole methodology to do this follow-up, this project, and we extracted and became a master degree thesis as well. That is possible for you with basic things for the economic development of productive chain, with technical assistance, with the entrepreneurship, with the use of territory, and resource to foster those small producers. So different projects have been carried out with the restoration, with agroforestry systems, economic base, and have cocoa as a very important aspect on that. And the final result that is that what we consider important, the 70% decrease in deforestation and an increase in income of 121%. And we excluded all the subsidies. This was the actual income growth. And this is an impact that we believe to be important, that can be replicated with the methodologies. It can be replicated to other areas in the Amazon region. This is a huge challenge. We did that in the rural settlement, and that brings a perspective, a great perspective for the future. And this is an example. What was the experience that we took from this project? Well, first, cocoa has a great potential because it restores the forest and it brings an important economic asset, which is the commodity, cocoa. And what we did was we created a fund and studied the possibility of investment thesis to the creation of investment fund to subsidize family producer in the Transamazonic region. This is under analysis, and let's see if we can bring this resource. The objective is to have a thesis of investment to gather resources. We talk to all producers to have predictability, economic results, and we want to bring other environmental attributes to this strategy of restoration. And we're not talking about only adding value to carbon or water resources in the ecological part, and all the environmental assets that may be associated to a strategy as such. This has been an experiment that was scientifically proven. We looked at an opportunity. There is a consolidated productive chain, but those producers in the Amazonic area, they did not have a lot of resources because the national credit system for the small producers make it unfeasible. But we're trying to find an alternative of economic instrument of the capital market. So we're joining this area, and in this perspective, to bring other alternatives, economic alternatives towards sustainable development. This is the example that I wanted to bring, where we use science, technique, experiment, replicability, and to transform that into public policies towards the private initiative. So this is what we have inserted in this group, because we believe those are initiatives that may bring economic alternatives to the region. So I'm just giving you an example for us to contextualize. There are others, of course. We are working with mid to large size producers beyond the legal reservation, so they may receive resources equivalent to the opportunity cost of the soybean production or cattle production, for us to have an experiment, and techno-scientific one, to see evaluating the forest according to the opportunity cost of the agribusiness, if the large entrepreneur, larger producer, either they have the right to cut down the forest to maintain it standing and be paid for that. And I'd like to highlight, just to close, as actor in public policies, we have acted with the interstate consortium for the sustainable development, and we have focused in this as the locus, a governmental locus, where this political stability may be settled first to build a minimum base for the development, the private development in the region or investment in the region. We have a strategic plan developed, structuring projects established, that dialogue exactly with what we're talking, things that we don't find in any other regional strategies. So that's what we have defended in this thesis, that governance within the states in the Amazon, considering the interstate consortium that is institutionalized, may be an important place for discussion together with civil society and research institutions and science, for us to build those paths and solutions for the region. Those were my considerations. Thank you, Eugenio. Now, I'd like to send a question to everybody on the panel considering the characteristics of the Amazon region and in this diversity of micro-regions. Well, because Amazon is not a single thing, there are different things. How to generate income in life, and how to guarantee the insertion of communities into new productive chains that are sustainable, and starting by Alex. The first thing is dialogue, respect. We always need to look at the different players. As Eugenie mentioned, sometimes just by discussing during breakfast, they think they just brought the solution to the Amazon. But no, we must respect the traditional communities. Some of them are seen as primitive, delayed in development, and this is wrong. We must look at people. They have different ways of talking, different standards, social organization systems that are quite different. They do not want to be under the same logics as us. So respect is important. And dialogue is another important point for us to have these people well involved in the cooperation work in different levels I believe it's important. I mean, we have the basis institutions with the government, with the private sector, and this dialogue is quite important with inclusion. Those are important factors. So, operation, inclusion, respect, and dialogue would be good indicators that we are advancing towards this development and respect to these populations. That's it. Eugenio, please. Well, I believe we have discussed with different states regarding the strategy on how to integrate these communities. First is a vocation thing, so looking at the Amazon territory and its different territorialities. Getting the south of Roraima, for instance, that has an area with a large potential of fisheries and is developing, or also with planted forest that use and have found actions with communities towards this integration. The other, the trans-Amazonic one, as I mentioned, the identification of productive chains that are associated to the cultures and the local territorialities. Being the cocoa in trans-Amazonic or fisheries at Tapajós in Santarém, or in the wetlands of Santarém, or in Acre with family agriculture producing beans, and other technologies that are quite advanced. Or indigenous people that produce baskets in São José da Cachoeira, as well as other types of food. This process of identification of vocations associated to territorialities and local cultures with their values and differences, they're important for this integration. The family agriculture that is being associated by different parts, such as, let's say, the lower Parnaíba River, where family agriculture has been associated to the larger entrepreneurs in agribusiness, always working with different process of production. So those are alternatives of economic insertion of these communities that have the need of being integrated in the market and won't be able to develop other alternatives. And this is our reality, and we must face that head on. Those alternatives are of ultimate importance for us to reduce, let's say, the scarcity of economic alternatives of food for these populations. The other is to reach another threshold of development that involves technology, the 4.0 technologies, IoT, because we have communities that have been associated to this type of territory, and we have other projects with the state of Tapajós government at Tapajós. The idea to make Tapajós into an innovation territory, so to associate IoT to the 4.0 technology at a territory that you have all the ingredients necessary to try and develop and make that region into a developed one according to the local tourism vocation and the family agriculture, as well indigenous and ecological development, as well as fishery production, and how to develop that. And we've thought about that associated to the cultures and territorialities. And when we talk about cumulative chains, we have the larger ones. We have worked under a different profile of action, which is, which comes from what I've mentioned, the compliance of a productive chain, and how to use those vectors of development and associating the agribusiness chain and how we can add to these small communities and the kilo communities, and not to be an economic development in the local communities. So this is a bit of the approach that we have been doing, and we believe this to be a larger experience. We have not a single one, but many that we can bring to this to this Amazon, to these communities. Thank you, Eugenio. As Victor has mentioned, there's no one single project and no one single model. And with that, Victor, I invite you to the dialogue. Thank you, Marcelo. It's quite interesting what is brought by Marcelo. I mean, to have this rich environment, well, we need to have the clear rules of engagement. It's hard for you to start this investment plan with less than 5 years when you have political stability. This increases the risk, and many companies do not agree with that. So you need to work with the rules of the game. The second point that you have brought, well, sovereignty. We have the national sovereignty on the territory. We have the Federative Pact and all that, and a sovereignty that we forget, which is the sovereignty of original peoples. We have different peoples that live in the Amazon for hundreds of or thousands of years, so they have the knowledge of this territory. So it's important to bring this technical knowledge and allow that to the traditional one. So if we have clear rules and we have safeguards that allow any company to interact in a fair and equitable way with the acai pickers in the family agriculture of small to mid-size, I can bring everybody to the table discussing at the same level. I bring that to the market. And well, we must work with the certification mechanisms, looking for premium products for niches of consumers that add value to it. And the rural technical assistance is very important, not only for the family agriculture, but for the extractivism as well. For us not only to have uniformity of product, but also quality according to the, let's say, Anvisa, the Brazilian FDA. And to follow the rules for any market, being Manaus, Porto Velho, or Rio, may purchase that frequently in quantity and quality, because the average consumer, they require that. And to bring to these consumers that they won't have pirarucu all year round. If they want to do so, they have to pay more. For instance, pirarucu, the fishing is done in the second semester. So from September to November or December, in this period, you have plenty in the market. If you want to buy that in March, you must have a whole logistic and planning structure for you to freeze it and send it to the market in March to have the Amazon Easter, as we call. So it's important to have that planned. And I stress, without the rules of engagement well established, and without understanding that we need a capital that's conscious or aware, because those transformations are quite necessary, but they come from a rhetoric and from a narrative of non-sustainable development of Amazon for 150 years. They started with the rubber cycles, and even before with the conquistadors. So we won't be able to solve that in 2 years and find a silver bullet. Thank you, Victor. Julia? Eugenia mentioned the experience of EPAM, which you're transforming into bonds and experience close to the Trans-Amazonic Highway. How to make it feasible, how to make the issuing of bonds into experience in this community scale. The green bonds and the climate bonds, they have benefits, and they bring social benefits in the developed infrastructure, not green bonds, but what they are funding. And as Eugenio himself has mentioned, the communication technologies, water, sanitation, infrastructure or railway infrastructure where you have the production being able to be sent forward, and when we can push more product more efficiently. So all of that has social benefits that are within it. Well, benefits for the communities that live on that production, or for the communities that is going to be benefited from this universalization, if I may, of sanitation, or universalization of solid waste management. So all of that has benefits, and this is all that green bonds fund. Those are areas with many opportunities. So it's green bonds, and I believe that to guarantee this continuity, let's say, is also to look at the risks in the region. So not looking at the climate risk, as I mentioned, is not taking into consideration the climate resilience and adaptation. You face the risk of deteriorating that infrastructure and having assets that are frozen and are forgotten, and all that is part of a benefit of a green bond or a climate bond. And a lot of what has been mentioned with regards to other, or let's say, labels. Right now we have different labels. We have blue bonds, social bonds. They are indeed very important. Those are demands from investments and have grown. And CBI is not ignoring that, and the trend is to have sectors in transition, in sectors that are, let's say, more brown, and to take them into transition to this greening, let's say. So all that is part of you being part of the benefit for the community in productive chain, especially looking at resilience and adaptation. You have risks of demands, let's say, when you talk a productive chain, but when you're planning your asset, you must consider what are the risks of the demand decreasing because there was a drought or a flood in my production, let's say. All of that encompasses this climate universe of climate risks, and the risks within all these changes that we're seeing. Thank you, Julia, Gabriel, and the contribution of IDB on this issue. It's hard to add too much after everything that has been said. Well, we are all fully committed to the region, with the public sector, as well as with the private one. We are open for business in the region. Now, in the second meeting, in the beginning of August, the presidents of the Amazon countries had one request they had to the IDBs to establish funding lines that are sustainable for bioeconomy of the Amazon, to create a donor fund. And we are committed to work on this consistent strategy. Morgan, that will speak on the next panel, this is a point to be explored. I just want to summarize a couple of points that are very important. Well, Vito mentioned the rules of engagement, and I believe that's important. The persistence, you need to have a long-term view. I loved when Eugenio mentioned that, said that we have commodities chains. They're quite large, and we must bring opportunities for them to share value with the communities, with local communities. Alex has mentioned about the work and vocation level, the natural vocation level. And I believe this is fundamental. We need to lay hint of that. And at the end, I can give you a couple of examples that may sound silly, but how can you link those chains, those local wills? For instance, Ecuador, they have an Amazon chocolate brand that costs 8-fold more per gram than any other chocolate, that is sponsored by one of the largest chocolate companies in the world with the Amazon brand. And this has been a sustainable chain for 12 years. We haven't been able to achieve that. Another silly example, but the Central restaurant in Lima, it was voted one of the best restaurant in the world. It's in the top 10 restaurant in the world for over 10 years. And you go to Central, you have a certified menu of Amazon projects that come from communities. Why can't we do that in Brazil? Perhaps Alexa Tala, the chef, has done that. But like I said, those are small examples, but they show the global to local to global link with companies that with smaller economies and let's say with less advanced technologies in Brazil, but we must be able to do so. And a couple more examples, Marcelo, just to illustrate what we can do. When I was involved with the indigenous peoples in the Madeira River, we listed the vocation in the state of Rondônia, a state that leads the Federation of Industries. And one of the main callings was the logistics. And that came from data that back then surprised us all. The market in Amazon, for instance, in the east side of Peru and Bolivia, we did a research and saw that 93%, and correct, this is something that Victor has mentioned, 93% in 2012 of the TV sets, all that Bolivian and Peruvian market, you know where it came from? From Japan and Korea. Korea and Japan offer 93% of the TV sets. The same company that produces some of these sets in Manaus. So we were not able to take that space and bring that to logistics and organization. So the products that are produced, we weren't able to take the products that are made in the Amazon. They were brought from Japan and Korea. So that shows where our flaws. And as Development Bank, we have an important role, not only into promoting the synergies or working with the public and private sectors, with institutions of research and development, to try and leverage not only funding, but the knowledge, institutional memory, and to try and be part of this fabric to create predictability, rules of engagement, and long-term views. Gabriel, you brought a thing that I'll keep for the second panel for Morgan. It has a great opportunity of business among the Amazon countries, certainly. But along the lines that we have mentioned, and considering the scale of local communities, the traditional communities, and the riparian communities, I forward another question to all of you: how to foster larger companies to act in the Amazon, funding projects and supply chains to promote the development of local businesses and guarantee traceability in this value chain. Alexis? I believe Victor talked about that, the certification issues, I believe, in the core of that. Other points that may be important initiatives is the guarantee participation seals, although it's not the same as an accreditation, but perhaps in a more local, regional context, maybe an interesting way out for that. Well, and we see that another point is society. Society needs to make choices over what products they want to purchase, and we've seen here in our case with the decrease of investments by the local government and the support to environmental agencies, we try to find abroad strength to act. And from a series of works that we carried out, we have a series of different types of support that come from Europe, Switzerland, France, Germany, United States. And I believe it's extremely important because from what we have discussed with those topics and with players of private sector especially, we see a demand from society that's a lot stronger for products that have origin that can be traced. So there's a movement of the very private segment of the people that work in this product of adequating to the demands of society. So it's not something that has been said or like greenwash or anything of that sort. There's social pressure, and I believe the pandemic has boosted this process of finding, of people looking for products that do not damage nature and may respect gender issues and the labor of people, then that are not involved with child labor or slave labor. And perhaps there are various certifications and the clarification of community of what products I'm going to obtain and where I'm going to obtain, and the very populations related to the supply chain of these products, as it has been mentioned, as Azevedo had mentioned, 20 years for Ecuador, they have been providing that. So the pressures of society and the year for society to be part of that and certification, those are the pathways in order for us to have this market inclusion and this diversification. Thank you, Alexis. Eugenio? Marcelo, we have this concern of how to transform the Amazon into this more attractive and competitive project or area in the global market. So what have we established to attract companies and to develop local productive chain where this type of integration is done? And I mentioned before, we need to give legal certainty to that. And how to provide legal certainty? First, establishing a territory that is considered strategic for this development project and to bring these guarantees of certainty. In this process that we are developing, well, we need to develop projects that are sustainable, and we're doing something that is quite practical. And something like that was presented in to say, how am I going to attract investors and bring this certainty to the territory, and how to do so? Create an index of sustainability with the criteria, ESG criteria, for us to be able to establish a territory where you have all conditions to cut resources and to fund investments in works and infrastructure works and the development of the chain, and to know that the product won't bring a negative impact that is larger than the benefits for the region. So we're proposing the creation of indexes, and we'll try to do at Maranhão to create this territorial sustainability index where you have all the survey of what are the risks associated to environment, climate, biodiversity, water. One of the indexes, the social index, let's say, that does not have slave labor, etc., that carries out an action that promotes the social economical inclusion of traditional populations and indigenous populations that will be associated to that. This territorial governance we consider to be fundamental in order to bring this investment forward. We created this dialogue making reference to the National Confederation of Industries. We started this dialogue with CNI, and what was discussed is how we map all the Amazon-based industries. We need to develop a platform with all those indicators that entrepreneur that is in China, that is in the United States or Europe, may look at that as investment process. Let's say if I invest here, I have more risks, or in here, less risks, so I can invest and have a high impact investment in the region. In region X, where I want to contribute to the development of traditional communities. And that type of environment that brings legal certainty and shows that the investor will have a certain return. And this is fundamental for us to bring more companies that bring business opportunities to the Amazon. So in this perspective, we believe it's fundamental for those strategies to be developed considering a vector of development and not a vector of exploitation of the region. And on that sense, we can attract, and of course, associated to that, all our colleague Alexis has mentioned, all that together with traceabilities that become consequent parts of this process and complementary to that. So that's something I have thought about. In sum, legal certainty in the land, the necessary safeguards for the inclusion process, and the certainty for the investor to have return, but also to bring development associated to the local communities. Thank you, Eugenio. Victor, you interface with larger companies, with global ones, and companies that have been attracted to Manaus with the incentives of the free economic area of the Amazon. How to bring more business opportunities and this instead of just tax revenue? Well, first of all, I believe we must be coherent. This is something that I always look for in my personal and professional life. So it's inconceivable to have a talk as such 2 years ago, working with the third sector, talking to Bradesco or Coca-Cola company. Now we must understand that those productive chains, they're extremely impacting, and we must sit and talk to everybody. They are part of the transformation. So, Vale do Rio Doce, so when we talk about, when we go back to traveling and talking about Petrobras, this point of coherence, IPAN has this discussion with a growing sector. And so for us to understand that this transformation of the Amazon, will develop and start talking with the sector is important. And having that in mind, we work not only in the states of the Amazon in other countries, and we always try to see how our activities can improve the core business of our participants. How can I support Coca-Cola? And because not only processing Guaraná and grow it, I mean, how can they do that more efficiently? And we can't forget about the economic issues. We can't be too romantic once again, saying that I will support the repairing forest in indigenous families with the company having losses. No, this is inconceivable. In philanthropics, they have a limited space of action. The market mechanisms, they are more effective. And as it was mentioned by the sector, the attraction of these investments, in addition to what has been said, it is important for us to have a plan. So Eugênio and Alex, they talk about that, and Gabriel is on the other side of the table, but has experience with, so to have that in a more effective way. So it is important to have this plan. From this moment on, I need to mention the bottlenecks. I need to understand the bottlenecks in a specific case. And talking about pirarucu fish, and first to send to a national market chain towards São Paulo and Rio, I had to talk about the whole productive chain, thinking about freezing, because I can't get from the middle of the forest and take to Rio in less than a day. And then R&D comes in. You develop the salted pirarucu through two private partners in the infrastructure and with CONAB and other incentive tools for this to be done in the best way possible. So I can take that salted, dry, that has a larger shelf life, and some people even like the taste even more, and I can add value to it. So once again, so bridging the technology and regulatory framework, I can bring a value chain, and even more than that, I can add value to this chain. An important fact that in my explanation and other colleagues, well, it seems that everything is too simple. And why wasn't it solved? Because Amazon is gigantic and it's huge and it's diverse. And what we see in Rondônia, you see the difference of institutional framework and people in Pará, in Amazonas, and that's why I need this diversity of institutions. We have the local ones that are very important, and regional ones. Gabriel has brought up the impacts. Well, we need this multilateral regional ones, this Mercosur pact, and even the SDGs, which is global, to act and incentive this type of agreement. And we'll bring an avenue towards the productive sector to enter with what they're good, which is money and results. Victor, we are short on time. Julia, your answer, please. We had great, and I'll repeat myself a little bit, even with regards to how to foster the larger companies to act in the Amazon. And those are the problems that we have for projects and to attract this international investment. It's a bit of what Eugênio has mentioned. It's about having local risks for investments, legal risks, and so we need to mature this regulatory adjustment to bring more investors. And we have the traceability part and the leverage towards that. And all of that is the attractiveness they have for green bonds, where we have an annual report. It is part of greater benefit. So we have this traceability that Alex has mentioned. And it's, well, in order for us to say that I will bring Gabriel, we have had this change in the funding where you had the presence of the public funding, and we will bring this private funding to the international investment. So we have many of those natural challenges, and those are things that the development is in multilateral institutions may aid bringing technical knowledge, as well as guarantee structures, risk mitigation, exchange rate, and the actions of a multilateral bank, being the facilitators of this channel. And so we have certification, and this part of governance, the territorial governance as well is very important. Thank you, Julia. Gabriel, Julia brought a hook. So if you can do 1.5 minutes, and once again, rules of engagement, legal certainty, and we must have a new social pact. I talked to a large entrepreneur that wanted to fund a project in Pará. He was from Norway. I went to Norway. He was a world leader in climate and sustainability. Says, I'm not, because my previous experiences, I get there as a criminal. Anything I do right is neutral. Any accident, anything out of common, I become target of society, of public prosecutor's office, and so on and so forth. And this is a point that we must think as society. This entrepreneur, this foreign entrepreneur, this leader, well, the Amazon society is xenophobic. I don't want to into the reason, but it's a perspective that we must hear about. And on Julia's side, there is no way out. We must attract capital. We have $1 trillion invested at negative interest. Investors that invested as such to have any type of certainty. More than $1 trillion at negative interest. And you see, with COVID, the Amazon, in the Amazon it was small. So you may criticize, and this is with the GDP of these countries. This will bring impacts, and they are the long-term ones. So from the moment this is readjusted, the role of the private flow, the private capital, is even more important. It is fundamental to bring all of that forward to attract this private capital. Marcelo, I just wanted to close. Well, I just want to pay tribute to someone that I met during my career that had this Amazon work, journalist, Washington Novice, that passed away this week. And I just pay tribute to the development of the Amazon that he's fostered. Gabriel, use his last 10 seconds for close the floor. Alexis, 10 seconds. I just wanted to remind you that within the Amazon, we have many different Amazons. And it's important to highlight that because this makes a world of difference. And as you have said, there's no silver bullet. I believe it is very important. We looked at that under the companies and investors and all that, but engagement of society is fundamental for those changes to take place. And I go back to my initial talk and I finalize with a couple of words, a moment of transition where communication is important, associated to data, and for us to work in a collaborative way and inclusive, for us to have an Amazon where we'll have well-being for the people, and for us to decrease the social vulnerabilities and emissions of greenhouse gases, and for us to conserve the biodiversity. For me, it's a pleasure to participate in a panel of capable people. They're so intelligent and so aware of the realities that we have in the region. Eugênio? I'd just like to congratulate for the initiative and the Federation of Industries. So the congratulations for initiative. IPAM is available to all of you for us to continue with this dialogue and building solutions. And I'd like to greet the rest of the panel. Thank you very much. Victor? Just once again to congratulate you with everybody that has helped us. I've received feedback that says that is a great dialogue. In September, we have the Amazon Day together with the World Assembly of the United Nations. So we'll have a CDS and Amazon broadcasting that in Chile. So I'd just like to thank you and congratulate you for the initiative. I believe the discussion was amazing, and it is a pleasure to be part of this floor, this virtual floor, or panel, I mean. So let's move towards this discussion and to promote that the Amazon is an instrument of investment and is green. Thank you very much for your participation. We have many people watching together with us. I'd like to reinforce the invitation for the next panel right after this one. Please stay tuned. We'll discuss international cooperation in a larger scale. And thank you very much to our panelists. We're very grateful for us to be able to together with a dialogue to find the best pathway towards sustainable development. Stay tuned.
Pessoal, obrigado.
Welcome to the second panel of the World Forum Amazon+21. This is the second meeting of this initiative. And the second panel will deal with the public fostering and leverage mechanisms for the development of the Amazon region. The view of institutions at the demand of the Amazon region's possibilities and mechanisms of cooperation and access to resources. For that, we count on the presence of Igor Cave of the ABDI, the Ambassador of the European Union in Brazil, Mr. Inácio Ibanez, Morgan Doyle, representative of the World Development Bank, International Development Bank, IDB, Petrona Cansado, Director of Credit and Guarantees of BNDES, representing the President of the institution, Gustavo Montezano. And now I pass the floor to Igor for his opening statement. Igor, welcome to Amazônia+21.
Bom dia a todos e a todas. Queria agradecer primeiramente ao convite para participar desse fórum bastante importante do nosso ponto de vista, pelo menos da ABDI, da Agência Brasileira de Desenvolvimento Industrial. Temos acompanhado já há algum tempo as discussões, os debates sobre a Amazônia, sobre a ressignificação, inclusive, dos negócios, dos modelos de negócio. E para nós é uma grande satisfação poder ajudar nesse primeiro momento de debates, de clarificar e de ter ideias para passarmos aí então para a prática. Então, Marcelo, você que nos media, meu muito obrigado e bom vê-lo.
The mediator, is great to see you. Likewise, Igor, I'll pass the floor to the Ambassador of the European Union that contributes with our dialogues. For many times we were together in different fora by CNI. Ambassador Inácio, your
Bom dia, grande prazer aqui estar com todos vocês e com os palestrantes de muito nível. E realmente para a União Europeia, particularmente a delegação da União Europeia, estar aqui neste fórum da Amazônia+21 é bem importante. Ter a possibilidade já de participar ou de ouvir ao vice-presidente na sua apresentação inicial. E realmente para a União Europeia, a cooperação com o Brasil, que é um parceiro estratégico da União Europeia, é importante e fazer estes esforços de trabalho com vocês também no âmbito da Amazônia é ainda mais importante. Então, fico muito esperançado de ter um bom debate com todos vocês. Muito obrigado.
That we're going to have a great debate here. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador. Mr. Doyle, representative of IDB in Brazil.
Bom dia a todos participantes. Agradeço muito em nome do Banco Interamericano de Desenvolvimento a oportunidade para vir aqui à Amazônia+21, esse fórum tão importante. Gostaria de agradecer também ao Marcelo Tomé de Almeida, presidente da FEIRO, pela oportunidade para debater e contribuir neste tema tão relevante e tão claro para o Banco Interamericano de Desenvolvimento, como aliar a preservação e desenvolvimento econômico da região amazônica e o papel dos mecanismos internacionais e da cooperação. Também cumprimentar os palestrantes ilustres que estão aqui conosco e dizer que vai ser um prazer compartilhar com todos vocês. Obrigado.
Thank you, Morgan. Petronia, please.
Bom dia a todos. Queria agradecer também a presença do BNDES de estar nesse fórum. A Amazônia, toda a questão de meio ambiente, na Amazônia em particular, são muito caras para o banco, e esse tipo de iniciativa de promover debate, onde você pode articular com players que têm os mesmos propósitos e estão buscando os mesmos objetivos, ele é fundamental, porque os problemas são muito complexos, são amplos, e só com esse tipo de diálogo e com unindo esforços é que será possível, né, avançarmos numa agenda de desenvolvimento inclusivo e de baixo impacto, que é tão importante para a região.
The last meeting promoted by Amazon+21, the Vice President of the Republic, General Mourão, was with us and mentioned innovation as one of the pillars towards the development, towards a sustainable Amazon. What is the role of ABDI in the construction of solutions towards the sustainable development of the region? Marcelo, first of all, thank you for your question. As you yourself mentioned, not only for the Amazon, I believe innovation is fundamental for any country in the process of development. I believe all of you will have to agree with this first assessment. Brazil has been pursuing for a while an improvement of its innovation indexes. The last results were not so good, but due to this health picture that we have right now, our companies, even the startups, they went back strongly they started thinking about innovation a lot more. And with regards to the Amazon, in this debate forum that we are, it is very important to have this view that this productive process, but the way to do the sustainable development will go through innovation. Amazon has important wealth that is they're known worldwide. We are in a world where a digital economy will think and live by economy. So we have in Brazil a large capacity of creating development and producing technology and innovation. We have in the Amazon a region that by political choices for many decades fostered the standing forest using manufacture, which is quite important, of course, to generate jobs in the region. But in my point of view, we need to take a step beyond that. We need to create something parallel to this development model that has been established for a while in the Amazon region. And part of this process comes from innovation. And the agency, ABDI, well, we have worked towards strengthening the ecosystems of innovation in Brazil, and especially in the Amazon region. Recently, talking in this ecosystem, I mentioned the need of supporting as agencies projects of advanced manufacture, the so-called 4.0 industry. Since there is manufacturing already in the region, how do we modernize the existing manufacture, even linking how can we link the startups with established companies? We have tried to work towards a view that is quite encompassing, in a view that we need to change the driving force, something that conditions the development of the region, linking this driving force to measures and initiatives that aim at diversifying economically to innovation. The existing processes, the production, must continue but must be modernized and improved. And we have used efforts in the process for the region to be able to, well, by using their own capacities and strengths, the competitive advantages that they naturally have in order to leverage more and more the development of the region. Of course, Marcelo, your question is not only in the point of view of the wishful thinking. It's not only what we want, but it has the political economy together with that. And I see now that after so many years working with industrial development, that is quite fundamental that civil society players and members of the government themselves to understand that this step forward needs to be taken quite swiftly, under penalty of, once again, we be left behind. We have a great potential in the region for towards the development of technologies using bioeconomy, biotechnology in the world. This is fundamental in the pharmaceutical industry, and we need to act as such. And the agency has positioned itself on that. This initial work, with this initial words, I can answer by saying that startups in 4.0 manufacturing, spreading new technologies and improving the ecosystems is the most important thing. And the commitment of these innovation projects to transform into patents and products. Because there's a perception in Brazil that we invest a lot in pure science with all respect to academia and research, but we need to increase this, and this is a fundamental role of ABDI, to have applied sciences in order for us to transform this into a product, into prosperity. How does this process take place? This guarantee that at the end of the innovative project, we have a good product. Well, in the point of view of ABDI, all of our projects, they privilege the productive sector, the industry, retail, trade, or commerce. What we have taken care of is that as we use public resources for us to be able to bring more capillarity towards the existing innovation. Data, or given that they can take ownership. Well, we have a strong and present work, because we are within the Ministry of Economy, with the INPI, the National Institute of Intellectual Property and Industrial Property. And INPI has made a great effort to decrease the backlog of patents and concessions. This is a work that ABDI has worked with them, of digitalization of the patent requests in Brazil. And we have worked with them for these projects, these joint projects, to have a guarantee that the process of innovation, when taking place, because, well, it is an innovative process and risk one, when it takes place, for us to provide guarantee that the property right will be granted. We have the problem with the backlog. The industrial property law has been discussed. Right now, the government set forth a national strategy of intellectual property quite recently. And we have problems in Brazil. And I have to say, institutionally, to guarantee, not because the law is weak, but the time-consuming process of granting patents, or work with INPI to allow those projects, when they produce innovation, to produce patents, without a legislation that grants us legal certainty, and without an institutional coordination process, we wouldn't be able to achieve it. And for the Amazon, the same thing. We must guarantee within the legal limits that this innovation process to generate wealth within our country, and for us to be able to foster the attraction of investments. So what we want is this process to always take place transparently. We have this fight with this dialogue to guarantee that there is a coordination process to decrease the patent time to be granted with great intellectual property being created. Thank you, Igor. Ambassador Ignacio. Considering the pillars of economic restoration of our European Union based on climate change, reduction of losses of biodiversity, and considering the opportunities of investment in new businesses in Amazon, how to attract the European capital towards the region? Thank you, Marcelo. Great question. I wanted to start by saying that we are all living in complicated times. The COVID crisis that our government are facing with the responsibility of responding to health and the economic challenges and the social one as well, effect of this crisis. As we see the things in the European Union, this crisis, which is a human crisis, is also an opportunity to make changes and reorient our way to produce and our way to live and how to relate to the environment. In this point of view, the European Union has worked on that for a while, and with COVID, we're going to strengthen this idea to launch the Green Agreement, Green Pact, and the sustainability in the three parts, the economic, the environmental, and social. And this is what this investment the European Union is doing with this new European Commission, and it's the will, and it's what to respond to a challenge, the demand of society, of the European society and European citizens. They speak more and more of this respect to the environment, and I believe this is reaching many other places in the world. This is the way to go for the European Union, and this is something that, with our relationship with the rest of the world, in particular with our strategic partners, Brazil is one of these partners, and with Brazil we want to build this idea of transformation of our relationship with the world. Igor talked about the potential Brazil has, and we've heard the Vice President, well, all the ideas that they want to promote from the Amazon Council. And it's going along the lines of what the European Union defends, and we want to work hand in hand with Brazil, with the government, and with this new configuration of the Amazon Council. We believe there are many things that we can do together, things that we have built already in the past. This is not something that we're going to start from scratch. We've had a very useful relationship with the Brazilian government in the past, and now in the present we want to remain engaged with the Vice President, with the Amazon Council. I had the opportunity of talking to Vice President in a meeting that we've had with all ambassadors of the European Union, and we had the ambassadors of the European Union in the UK, in this region, and then there was this possibility of participating in a bilateral meeting with the Vice President, with the subcommission that dealt with the international community. This is the idea of the European Union. We have ongoing projects with Brazil, and particularly with the Amazon region. We have worked in the land regulation, both in state and federal governments in the legal Amazon, and we have worked a lot with the reinforcement of the social value chains in diverse territories of traditional communities, as well as the promotion of biodiversity in Brazil. Brazil is the largest power in biodiversity, and with that, the European Union wants to consider in Brazil. We have the preparation with Brazil, and we have the condition of Brazil in the Climate Plus program. Have work in sustainable agriculture, because we are quite aware that with the concern of the Brazilian government, and to give a sustainable use of resources, not to close the Amazon to be, let's say, a touristic attraction. I mean, this is important, but not only that, we must develop the capacities of development in this region. In this point of view, the European Union has worked in partnership with IPAM, with SEBRAE, Cirato, Embrapa, and we want to continue. There's an important program of innovation. As we talked about the point of view of innovation, the European Union has a program that's called the 2020 Horizon, and now it's going to call Horizon Europe, or Horizon, and we have a great discussion, or a great interaction with Brazil, and we have partnership with many development banks, being European, such as the European Investment Bank, the AFD from France, KfW from Germany, and other development banks, being Brazilian or international ones. And with this point of view, I'm quite pleased to have a BNDES represented here. So we have a development bank with the European Union, and those are many of the programs that IDB carries out around the world, and we want to have those partners. And I'd like to close, because I know this is an initiative of CNI. I want to close with a message to the private investors, being them international or Brazilians. We recently had many statements from the private sectors that were quite focused in the support of the sustainable development. This is great news for Brazil. The international investors should look at Brazil from a sustainable point of view. It's important for the private investors in Brazil to have this focus, and the partnership that we have with CNI is an example of things that we can do together with the private sector in our countries. The European countries see that as a driver, and we see the private sector of Brazil, international private sector, is prepared to work with Brazil in this scope, and it is quite positive. The idea of continuous partnership remains, and we're quite pleased with the things that we've done in the past, but even more, we're very hopeful with the things that we can have for the future. Thank you very much. Excellent, Ambassador. With a signal of the European Union to work with international cooperation with Brazil, with the sustainable development, and the main challenge to be overcome is to reposition the image over what we've been doing as a nation with regards to this point, especially the Amazon region and the closing of bonds with the European Union. This will allow a translation of an image, or to translate it into an image of what actually happens there. Petronio, what contributions BNDES brings to the sustainable development of the Amazon? How to support the consolidation of a new economic matrix for the region, guaranteeing the adequate infrastructure? Thank you for the question, Marcelo. We'll contextualize really quick to try and explain a bit about the action of the bank in a wider way. BNDES has over 60 years of history supporting the development of the country, and throughout time, the needs of development, they change. There was a technological change, development that happened in the world, something that provided an improvement of quality of life for many people in a different way to live, and at the same time, there were consequences that made very clear the importance of the sustainability. In this context, this theme of sustainability gains more and more strength, and this is a priority within BNDES. And as most development banks and governments around the world, the same thing happens. The problems are huge. Brazil, in this context, is a protagonist because we were able to preserve it. So there is a great percentage of the Brazilian territory that is composed by native forest, and the Amazon in this context has a very important role. It responds to 60% of the national territory and 85% of the native forest of the country. So it's a huge region, a region that is not uniform. There are different uniquenesses or peculiarities. The problems are huge. And the point is that you have 30 million people living in the region. So you create a paradox somehow. On one hand, you have a green treasure of biodiversity forest that we must preserve. On the other hand, you have 30 million people living in the region, and this is a region that presents the worst human development index in the country. This is a region where it has the largest child mortality rate, a region that we have the worst sewage rate in the country. So you see how huge the problem is and how we can promote economic development that is inclusive, sustainable, and low impact. And BNDES is inserted under this context. In the position of the bank, it has been happening throughout time, we are less and less being seen as credit bank, although we do that, we provide credit for infrastructure, but more than that, the role of the bank is a role of articulation. So we're close to the European Union, the World Bank, and the different fostering agencies in the country. For all those agents together, we're able to join together efforts to find the solutions that are possible to promote this development of region, and for you to take into consideration who lives in the region. The local population, they are the ones that are going to be capable to preserve it. If you have an individual that does not have quality of life, that does not have sanitation or electricity, let's say, that is concerned with the lives of their children, and if you bring knowledge of environment, if you can't do that with that person, imagine the person that has a quality of life and love the place they live. We Brazilians, we have a great love for the Amazon, and especially the ones that live in the region. We need to foster that and join together the effort or the will of all agents, being development banks, governments, companies, donors, that have the same principle, the same will to promote this type of sustainable development, to articulate in order for these solutions to exist or to come up. And in that sense, the bank has worked towards it in other initiatives that are not done by us. For instance, the Amazon Consortium, where you have the governors joining together with principles and pillars that to try and find uniform solutions for the region. We believe that's fundamental. The creation of the Amazon Council, all of this effort that's being carried out to preserve the region. And BNDES has a very important role, and we're usually towards services, but we are trying to have concessions for sanitation in Rondônia, in Acre, and perhaps the will of all governments in the region to use this bank first to have sanitation projects for the whole region to improve the sanitation indexes, something that we believe to be necessary to go towards sustainability. And on the other hand, I'd say that articulation, or to understand what are the pillars, and talking to some of the players, we found the four main pillars necessary for the development of regions. So basically, people. I believe this is a fundamental pillar. We can't forget the 30 million people that live in the Amazon. The second point is the forest in itself, biodiversity that we must maintain somehow and get value from this asset without affecting it sustainably. And the other point is infrastructure, and here we have basic sanitation and the digital part, because the infrastructure is more software for the region, and it's quite important for the communication. And the fourth pillar is linked to the land regulations. All those four pillars, I mean, the bank is dedicated to finding solutions and projects, always in partnerships with third parties because the solutions are complex, and the objective is to foster this articulation and discussion environment in order for us to be able to get not immediate results, but in a continuous improvement process that includes people in such a way that we can be very successful. Petronio, you bring an interesting view with regards to the expectation of behavior of the Amazonians, the dialogue with the 21st century. Nevertheless, the needs of infrastructure of the region are from the 19th century, so we have this great gap to be sorted out in order for us to advance in a future agenda for the region to be effectively sustainable. And the role of BNDES in this process is certainly of utmost importance. Morgan, here's a question for you. The Amazon region is composed by 9 countries and has a population of 35 million inhabitants. Considering the Pan-Amazonic region, as called, how to increase sustainable projects that promote the regional integration among the countries that compose the Pan-Amazon. Well, thank you for your question. I like very much the comments of our speaker. The IDB is lucky to act in all countries of the region. So it's part of our DNA, this transnational action. And we have been discussing with all the governments that participate. So in order to try and be part of this sustainable Amazon projects and all parts of the biome. This is all very crucial. They're crucial to potentialize the benefits and development and to create a wider market and to create opportunities for the population to live and to be able to develop itself. The challenge of advancing in infrastructure is not exclusive to the Brazilian Amazon. It is a challenge for all the countries in all Latin American and Caribbean. A couple weeks ago, we published a study that shows that Amazon needs to invest more and better in infrastructure. That 35% of the resources are wasted with expenses that are not forecasted in the project and a series of factors. So talking about financing, we have our focus is to work with the states and municipalities to bring visibilities and help the projects to be robust and well prepared. At the IDB, we are aware that bioeconomy represents a huge opportunity. So we must talk about this view of the Amazon that has been established and mentioned by all the speakers. We have a great advantage, a great asset, which is the biodiversity. Under that, Brazil and Amazon is a world superpower. Latin America and the Caribbean, they have 34% of the species in the world, and the monetary value of the services provided by all the ecosystemic services in Latin America and Caribbean are $15 trillion a year. That is over 10% of the world ecosystems, and $11 trillion of those are contained in the Amazon region alone. So with this grandeur, if I may, we see the business opportunities that biodiversity represent. They're quite clear, in fact, and this is something that is a great stimulus for improvement. So over $44 million or people, in fact, they depend on that. That doesn't mean that those resources must be exploited. No, it's the opposite. The nature provides us with benefits when it's in equilibrium. Last month, we published a study with International Labor Organization that showed to zero the emissions in Brazil would generate 7 million jobs. So you don't need to increase the use of forest, is actually to stop deforestation and shift it and use those this in a better way, promoting the improvement of those places and the restoration of those areas. With ecotourism, for instance, those are huge possibilities. And there are great opportunities for the region to generate income and environmental benefits as well. That's why we believe it's quite timely to have a debate as such. We understand those opportunities will require an integration and investment in infrastructure and a wholesome look at the Amazon and to attract investment. And we're very excited with this challenge and following our partners in the panel and the ones that are watching this event to follow this process of conceptualization and to bring the investment into practice and all the projects that may follow this process. We hope that throughout this event we can count on ways to finding the solution. Thank you, Morgan. The infrastructure also permeated all that having said, I want to send a question to all. Considering this new legal framework of sanitation that brings a bigger participation of private sector and a better regulatory capacity, it brings a need of other types of investment in Amazon, such as connectivity, logistics, among other types of infrastructure. How to bring swiftness to such important projects and how your institutions see this agenda, starting by Igor, please. Well, Marcelo, we have talked about infrastructure in a wider way, of course. And you mentioned something quite important. We, in the country, have, in my point of view, a great dilemma to deal with. We just approved the basic sanitation framework, and this is an agenda that the 19th century. So we need to deal with the 19th century agendas in the 20th century as well as the 21st century, from sanitation to connectivity. And I'd say that we can't set aside any of those. We need to work all of them at once. Just yesterday, in a conversation that I've had, I found out that the connectivity at a city, the largest second city in the state of Amazonas, is quite precarious still. And we were discussing about the possibility of having private 5G networks. So we were discussing the legal sanitation framework, and at the same time, we were discussing 5G auctions, different realities that need to walk hand in hand. We have a state such as Roraima that is not linked to the national electricity operator system. So electricity is a problem there. So we have energy problems, logistics, connectivity, and sanitation. 30 million people, IDH indexes that are lower in the country. So we have a very challenging framework from then on. In the point of view of ABDI, I can't work as a bank in sanitation. We're working strongly with the improvement of connectivity. We're having this 5G work towards the possibility of a private sector having its private 5G networks. And this involved the whole productive sector, not only industrial one, but also agriculture in the Amazon region, in those areas where agriculture is quite strong. and that to increase through the use of technologies or those new infrastructures. So what we have, and we can't set aside logistics issues that should be used in the Amazon region. Well, my specific point as Conservancy, we have IDB, European Union here represented. Each of us deal differently in harmoniously with infrastructure, from a BDI with connectivity, going through sanitation, with BNDES and other forms of funding that may arise. Our point being, we must deal at once with all those challenges from the 21st century to the 19th century challenges. And I send a question now to Ambassador and ask you how the European Union and European investors may contribute in order for us to tackle the 19th century, the 20th century, and the 21st century all at once. I believe those situations is always it's important to look at what's happening in the place and the rest of the world. Well, the European Union, we had the larger priorities. And after COVID, once again, those priorities were reinforced. A clear idea is, well, we are about to adopt a budget. Well, we have a 7-year budget, or 2021-2017 budget is about to be approved. And you'll see that the larger priorities that we have are, on one hand, the green priorities, the Green Pact, and on the other, the digital one. So those will be the larger priorities of the European Union. And their internal priorities, let's say, well, what the European Union must transform, but there will be external ones as well. The scopes in which the European Union will want with their partners to have contributions. So we have Brazil and the Latin American countries. And probably Brazil will lead that and have a great opportunity that will be able to join the European priorities with a large power, because you have a lot to offer. You have many needs infrastructure-wise, but those needs converge into opportunities and great opportunities for the future. We, the European Union, and Brazil and the Mercosur countries, well, we have created this alliance towards the future, which is important, which is our agreement, the association between the European Union and Brazil. And our partnership agenda for the future has a lot of that established in the point of view of how much we want to help the Mercosur countries to build, first of all, a market. Mercosur, well, is going towards the future. The fact that we're going to have this partnership, this will be made very important. These green and digital areas, certainly, well, we want to work with our partners. Logically, this partnership is based on a project, an European project, based on private initiative, because the way we developed in the past, and we want to continue to have it in the future, is to have this private sector working hand in hand with us. The European companies, they have discovered Brazil for a long time. All European companies, they have been working for a long time, and we still believe the potential Brazilian market, but we have insisted, especially in the 2020, what they want to have is to have Brazil. Well, we see many international investors, and among those European ones, and we saw European companies and Brazilian companies going towards this point of view. So we are along the same line of working together and working towards this green future and investment in infrastructure. So I believe we have very good examples. BNDES, I've talked about that. This was done in the past, and this can continue in the future. The Inter-American Bank of development has this experience and also this regional guidance, which is quite important. And we need to focus on these regions. I believe you in the Amazon region, you have the Amazon Cooperation Treaty that has headquarters in Brasilia, and it's great to use such experiences from the point of view of European Union. All regional efforts are always more successful, and this is the example of European Union. Every time we do something together, we are a lot more successful. So our will is to work with Brazil and to help Brazil within the whole region. And those are the priorities that I believe you're choosing. You can count on the European Union. We'll be there. We're partners for a long time, and we want to continue being even more as partners, and to count with the private sector is very important for the future. And I was looking at the screen here. If you read the companies and institutions that are supporting the Amazon+21 efforts, well, you see large European companies, large Brazilian companies, and large international companies as a whole. So with the same type of guidance, it's great for Brazil. Brazil understood that, and particularly with the creation of the Amazon Council. What are the concerns of the international partners? I believe working together, we can do a lot. We hear about the image of Brazil due to the forest fires, but you also have a very positive image regarding what you have offered to the world. You have the preservation of your forest, the preservation of your biodiversity. All of those are the positive elements. So we can build on this positive image, this whole effort to improve the things that you as Brazilians mentioned that need to be improved, such as the social investment. And I heard the Vice President talk about that point of view. It is important to have the economic and social development of this region. And under this point of view, we want to contribute to this process. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Morgan? Regional integration, or under the theme of regional integration that composes the Amazon. This necessarily proposes infrastructure. How can the IDB help transnational infrastructure projects? And just to stress, it may seem an obvious point, but the gaps in infrastructure in the region, and especially in the Amazon, they are quite large. And this will require, as has been mentioned by our colleagues here, a series of partnerships to try and see to that. The Amazon region, just to give you an example, it has a huge logistics challenge. The distances of the main consumer markets, and the hardships of different terrestrial transportations, and even as well, this will require a very large effort to overcome these challenges. For that reason, we're proud to work with national institutions in the funding of relevant projects that have to do with this challenge of integration, both internal, with Amazon within itself, as well as other countries that share the Amazon. So under this context, we have a partnership with the BNDES to prepare projects that may be taken into consideration and launched as public-private partnerships and as concessions with Caixa, with the Brazilian banks for municipal infrastructure. And the idea, effectively, is to improve the infrastructure projects for the Amazon. But For that, it is necessary to have more information, because there's a classic saying in finance: is a good project is its funding. And I'd like to highlight this partnership that we have with the Ministry of Economy to the creation of Observatory of Sustainable Infrastructure that will be launched next month. This will have a very interesting incident in projects in the Amazon towards integration. It is an online portal that will bring detailed information and updated information on the opportunities and risks beyond the strategy to be able to advance an infrastructure to the region. And speaking of the 21st century infrastructure, as you meant, as the ambassador, this is a very important point. Well, connectivity as a whole, isn't it? And in this context, IDB has a great dialogue with Anatel, always working with connectivity themes, general connectivity, and including Amazon as a potential source of growth. And as being mentioned by the speaker, COVID-19 has shown very clearly the urgency of having accessibility in the past. We've talked about the growth of the digitalization of a decade in 3 months. So the importance of connectivity towards education, health, and to try and help the connectivity is fundamental around the world, but especially in the Amazon. So we believe there is a great opportunity to advance towards that. But talking about international aid, we are helping many Amazonian companies to access market. It's not enough to have a good product. It is important. It is necessary, of course, but it's not enough. You must have market access to market to deliver it. So we have a free portal that IDB opened for all Amazon companies called Connect Americas. Connect with 2 N's. And we invite all to access it. It is a free portal and has as objective to join together sellers and buyers both Brazilian and international ones. So it is a way to build this fair trade and to help all parties to have access to financial markets. And besides those, I just wanted to highlight the fact that, well, we're working a lot in the conceptualization of a program to support the Ministry of Mines and Energy to connect those homes that do not have access to energy through remote solar isolated systems. This is a great opportunity and a challenge throughout the Amazon. Both the Amazon, the Brazilian Amazon, as well as the other countries that are part of it. And this is a great opportunity to bring, in fact, all benefits to have access to clean energy to those communities. And finally, I'd like to highlight that energy will be necessary for the implementation of a new sanitation framework that we just celebrated with the advances that will bring, as in fact it may advance the investments on those senses. And for that we have in our private as well as the public area We will work with the National Water Agency towards the regulation and support and create institutional framework to advance in this process, as well as with our private branch to invest in such projects and follow that up with loans to have partners for the projects to advance. So just to stress, we have a great interest in supporting the investments in sustainable infrastructure at the Amazon. We believe we're going to be very creative with those funding sources or sustainable green bonds, and this is a project that we have our Financial Innovation Lab. This has a great potential as source of our funding, but we believe that the partnership with the BNDES and other development banks in Brazil, with the European Union, with everybody that has the large interest in promoting the sustainable development, will be key, and we are fully available as partners for over 60 years in Brazil to support and develop projects, to have the adequate modeling, and to support the funding. Thank you. Thank you, Morgan. Petronio. BNDES always had a very important role in the funding of infrastructure in Brazil and in the Amazon environment, how to decrease this deficit. I believe the answer is with a lot of articulation, with support to a project that have these characteristics of development and sustainability, and a great focus to make it comfortable for third parties to be able to invest in it. And there is, people are afraid to invest in the Amazon and support the region due to, for you to have a legal framework that allows people to have comfort in investing in it, and to have some structure by the bank and in a partnership with other agents, and to make it more comfortable to bring the private partners. Because if you don't touch it, you give space for illegal activities that get in the way of the sustainable development. So a great example. So we are supporting the Ministry of Mines and Energy. So you have this project of taking clean energy to remote areas of the country. The BNDES, the funding via Green Climate Fund, but if we can do that together with IDB, with other agencies, international agencies, the situation is more believable, it's more trustworthy, and we can get more resources reaching an area. Well, the volume of investment increased quite a lot due to the exchange rates. The equipment is in dollars, but with the scarcity of resources, we need more and more articulation for you to attract investors to be comfortable in investing and creating projects in this region. As many roles of the BNDES, we need to create these channels to create financial products that are capable of players that are to become comfortable into investing, and upon doing that, they will be helping and not creating an additional issue. And on the other hand, you need to have the other part. So you need to know who's at the edge. So it's fully So, although it's fundamental for this agenda, it doesn't solve things by itself. We have the huge challenge of implementing all sanitation, all ways, because at the end of the day, this impacts an increase of tariffs many times for populations that are not able to. You broke a pump. If you break a pump, you go and change it. But with Amazon, with all logistic things, well, you need to think careful. So you need to understand who is in the region for this problem to be identified, well treated, and for the cost adjustments to be done efficiently. So I'd say the role in the financial characteristics to structure that to design articulation, and with the help of international institutes that want to have a donation, and at the same time to have a solution that and we'll implement the solution. So I believe this should be the best role of the bank here. Petronio, you bring 2 points that are quite pertinent. First, is to hear the Amazonians to find solutions for the Amazon. We need to hear the ones that are in the region. And another part is the delay in the advance of the infrastructure agenda, because the conservation preservation model is under the isolation, and that has shown the challenge of the full conservation of biome in those isolated territories, many times others in the region, in many of these areas where the legal acts take place. So, but the integration of the territory, this will help the conservation agenda that will allow this to take place. Well, our time is short. I have one question to send to all before the final considerations that permeates our discussions. What barriers to be overcome for all the Amazon potential to be made concrete into sustainable development, and how to support local companies to find international markets, and to allow that each step of the value chains, while the requirement of sustainability to be met. Igor, please. Well, Marcelo, just to bring a couple of points of what are the barriers. What was developed is the integration of infrastructure. What is it? The energy one, and well, it shows the development, the isolated development to be integrated. So, and how it's seen in other regions of the country, and how it will produce, and besides the preservation of biome, that link to the economic and social environment. Besides infrastructure, you see another barrier. You see the Amazon region. This is the barrier, the social conservation. Well, so we need to take care of that. Well, now our largest gap in productivity of the country happens by local training, and some of you have already mentioned. You talked about this new economy that comes up. Well, it requires from our professionals a better training. When I talk about bioeconomy and productivity, one of the larger barriers that we have in the Amazon to do justice to this comparative advantage is the qualification. So we need to give a lot of attention. So we bring two barriers to the interlinking of infrastructure and the qualification. So regarding this, part of the answer to this question is in my 2 points: qualification of infrastructure, but sources of funding that somehow induce those companies to have new sustainable development models. And we talked about the green bonds, in engineering, in funding, a way that brings the sustainable models, and not models that are predators of the system that we want to the region. And the companies of the region, besides those funding forms that are more innovative and more financial, they need to be linked once again in integration with our ecosystem. And something that that will allow the north of Brazil with the new technologies, and something that we need to do in Brazil. I mean, we can't allow the development model that is preconized to the region prevail, and we can't interlink the regions, the companies of the regions. And I'll allow the other speakers to improve, to build on what I have said. Ambassador Inácio, your answer, please. Thank you, Marcelo. As Igor, well, the question is quite complicated and would lead to all of us. Well, I'm quite lucky that I have Igor, Petroni, and Morgan, better specialists, and will be able to complete. Because the work of ambassador is quite tough, and a barrier that I found, although less and less I have found, is this just a reservation, if I may, a reserve regarding the Brazilians being government or institutions on interests that may arise internationally in the Amazon. This image that they need to be interested by themselves, not something that brings interest to the Amazon. Truth is, there is a large interest in internationally speaking with regards to the Amazon, but it's an interest that is legitimate, but it's quite well addressed, because we don't have the solutions for the country, but each one of us have an experience and a will to cooperate with Brazil, and especially with the Amazon region. So this is good to be done that way. Brazil should make use of this genuine interest of cooperation, because this is something that is based on the relationship with the European Union, but I can speak for other partners of Brazil. It is an interest to try and find the development of the country that is so important for everybody. We're open to cooperating internationally with the federal government, and we're quite pleased to see this will of cooperation is done hand in hand with the government in this dialogue that we have with the Amazon Council, but also a cooperation with the states of the Amazon region. We've had a very useful contact with a consortium of the Amazon states. They've gone to Europe. They had a field trip in the European countries, and we'll go finally to Brussels, and we have a very useful cooperation with the municipalities and we'll cooperate with also with the civil society that is so important for a relationship. I believe a barrier in not seeing that the offers for of cooperation. I mean, we need to make him see that this is genuine, and it's great to be able to talk to you and to have this invitation to be part of here, and other international partners will be part of this debate, and this is highly important. We from the European Union, we offer you to make use to say that we are part of the concerns. We help you thinking about all the concerns, and this is the interest of Brazil and the interest of the international community. My message is that those barriers that exist, they shouldn't exist. And we have shown proof. We're in the country for many times and we cooperate for a long time, and we are cooperating. So I believe you can continue to enjoy this offer, and you should make use of the opportunity of working with us. It is great for Brazil. It is great for all the international community, and because what is good for the Amazon is good for all of us. And we certainly can add resources with public projects, but also private funds that are quite important for the country in order for us to work together. And I've seen many positive examples of such partnerships in the past. Thank you, Ambassador. If the question was not easy, I will bring more problems for Petrônio and Morgan. Well, these financial institutions permanently say that they have resources left in their accounts because of the lack of good projects to invest on, and people complain about. I mean, the project creators, they talk about the problem of the bureaucracy and how hard it is. So basically, let's talk about how can we facilitate the access to credit. It was harder. It was hard the other way. This one is even harder. And so just to start with something that I believe is relevant for the discussion, it is true that the world is looking at the Amazon, but we believe that this can be seen as an opportunity. The investor interested in the forests may be brought in to invest in green bonds. The consumers, Brazilian, European, or wherever they come from, they are concerned with the climate, and they can become buyers of Amazon certification projects, even with the premium that it brings in, and it can advance the economy. So it is an interesting opportunity. In order for it to be concrete, we have a series of operations that shows in the practice that it is possible to allow preservation and income. We could talk about the Sustainable Development Program of Acre, of the state of Acre, that is in the second phase, that funds the creation of a state forest over 140,000 hectares with integration so a small project so it is a beautiful history, because in the midst of the pandemic, well, it shows the benefits that come from the forest. The state of Acre is buying vegetables from the small producers and part of sustainable agriculture, and will donate to income from COVID-19. The product that leaves the crops is restoring the forest, the Acrean forest. So This is a beautiful example of productive chains. So you have mentioned what are the barriers. It is true that, to talk about barriers in the Amazon, there are great possibilities, but challenges are not lesser. And just so when we organize conceptually that for the bioeconomy in the Amazon to be springboarded, I mean, we need to talk about regulation barriers. This is a theme that is ever present. And we need to have a certification. And there is certification of projects that will give opening for the international market to be aware and to trust the projects. So I cannot be in agricultural and forest products that are not timber based. So in financial barriers that will deal with it, like you have mentioned. But you have this challenge, and to overcome that makes that several projects in Amazon to become feasible, because if the cost of funding is not feasible, there are many projects that will not be as well. So we need to be creative and need to innovate regarding the instruments, the green bonds, let's say, that I have mentioned, that has a great potential. The efforts of the development bank and the others to attend the best way possible, and this is quite relevant. And also this new wave of digital funding to take those green products to the consumers digitally. I mean, and besides a series of instruments to assess the credit risk based on data or based on non-traditional data, those elements may open. And mobile guarantees and some reforms that are seen right now by CDM regarding FDICs, I mean, this will all cooperate to that. But at the end of the day, you have good projects, well-structured projects with good financial models will facilitate to overcome the financial hardships. The technical barriers, the hardships are the logistics hardships and the problems to reach the markets. Well, those are topics in which the IDB acts quite a lot, and we believe they will be fundamental. Even, let's say, all railways and all. And I just want to highlight the last barrier, that would be knowledge. I like very much the risk upscaling and all that. I believe this is a great theme, and we need to research and spread opportunities of bioeconomy, as the people need to understand that there are many opportunities. That while keeping the forest standing and using all ecosystemic services it's providing and exploring other types of businesses, well, this will advance in this growth of the Amazon. That's why it's so relevant. to have events as such. And before closing, I'd like to invite all of you to, the Amazon. I invite you to follow Brazil Investment Forum, BIF. This is a flagship of the Brazilian government to bring better investment. This would be a hybrid event in São Paulo and online, and the idea is that the IDB is the founder of CAPEX and APEX in this effort. And we know the Amazon is one of the regions that will be more benefited regarding the new project. So it is a great window, great glass window for the world, and to iterate that we are available for the Amazon local governments to find more and more promising solutions for the sustainable development for that region. So dear and so important to all of us. Thank you. Thank you, Morgan. Petronio, let us. Well, a question that I was not comfortable for the others. I'll give you 1.5 minutes without being unlawful. Well, let's go quickly. And due to time, well, I was saved by saying that I agree with the restrictions of my colleagues and just build on that. First and last, we're fully open to talk and discuss regarding any topic of Amazon, and we have done a great work with the companies in Brazil to see what are the targets of these companies linked to environmental, and for the bank to try and help the European unions. Well, the European countries, they have the European companies, they have a lot of knowledge, and we're fully open for ideas and resources to get resources for the region. A barrier that has not been mentioned is the marginal risk. And talking to the companies that we've talked, they're quite afraid the image risks, and because touch the Amazon and people interpret it in a wrongful way. Perhaps this is one of the main points to try and find a solution. It's not something trivial for companies to support projects in the region. So we talk about this fact that, well, less than 2 months ago, BNDES had a discussion with the Guarantee Fund, but so we have the emergency program for access. This was just signed by the President of the Republic, and based on that, we've had $10 billion in the past week, well, more than 10 billion in credit. And so this was used, so this was done, this is more than was done 10 years ago. So the guarantee is, well, just for this is just for the small and mid-sized companies, and this is a great point for us to discuss, even with IDB or Morgan, and to study that case a bit more. After this crisis, well, we need to progress. We have resources to use as guarantees Amazon, and we need to be quite careful with what type of operation or what type of company. But in this part of guarantee, this program is being a larger and larger success. A great deal of resources are being applied into operations that are without guaranteeing companies. The banks are not requiring that. So the process has been simplified, and with rates, with the interest rates that are lower than before the pandemic. So I believe this is an example of, well, when during a crisis, well, to have this technology and how this was developed and how we can make use of that moving forward. And this is an example that we have. I think I follow my time. Thank you, Petronio. If you all agree, 5 seconds just for last words, starting with Igor. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everybody who for Amazon+21, and I'd like to thank my co-panelists, and we have the discussions and any productivity of Brazil. Thank you. So I just like to say thank you very much, and especially Amazon+21. You're doing a great work, and please count on us, fully count on us. Thank you, Ambassador Morgan. I'd like to thank the speakers, Marcelo, and everybody who organized this great event. Count on us. Thank you. Petronio. 5 seconds more. Thank you very much for your time, for the opportunity. I wish you great success in this event and the results, and I'd like to thank everybody. Brazil can count on BNDES. Thank you. Thank you, Petronio. I'd like to thank the panelists, World Forum Amazon+21, initiative of the local government of Porto Velho, the Development Agency of Porto Velho, Federation of Industry of the State of Rondônia, together with the IAL and National Confederation of Industry. I'd like to thank the SEBRAE, government of the State of Rondônia, Energisa, and Sustainable Energy of Brazil, Geral Plant. I'd like to inform that the meeting will be on September the 23rd, when we'll talk about agribusiness and infrastructure. I'd like to invite you all to participate with us. I'd like to thank you for your participation. Thank you very much.